Mason Mount and Manchester United. It wasn't a conversation I thought we were going to be having this summer, but here we are. So what I'm going to do in this video is run through a full story of Mason Mount to Manchester United rumours. Where did they start? They've exploded in the last 24 hours, but the roots go back a few months for sure. This isn't something that's just been pulled out of thin air. Mason Mount, I want to explain in this video why there is logic to it. It might not be the name that you want. I'll be honest, it's not the name I want. Doesn't mean it will be a bad signing. I'm going to run through the full story of these reports, run through every single news story when it was released, so you can be bang up to date and understand everything. And then we'll take a quick look at how Mount would fit into a United team and why there is logic to Ten Hag looking at him. Please give me 10 minutes of your time. If you do enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like on it by the end of it and become part of the community. But Mason Mount, right? He's a player who's pretty much been university loved by the managers that he's played for. But for fans, you look at him and go, is he really the best in his position? He's somebody who's got an incredible work rate off the ball. He's pretty reliable on it. He's not the best in class on it for sure. And that might be what's annoying a lot of United fans. But Mason Mount to Manchester United. As I said, this is a story which has exploded in the last 24 hours. But its roots go back a few months. We can see here, this is Matt Law from the Times. Daily Telegraph, sorry. Back in February, the Man United, Liverpool and City are all interested in Mason Mount. We can see there, Jacob Steinberg following up from that in March, saying United have added Mount to a list if Jude Bellingham proves too expensive, and he always was. Jude Bellingham, he's going around with Jude. Jude Bellingham was never a conversation, as great as he could have been for Manchester United. James Ducker from the Telegraph, 10th of March here, saying, look, Mason Mount is on that list, as well as a few other, he's just thrown names out there. Frenkie de Jong, Jude Bellingham, Moises Caicedo, and Mohamed Kudus. Lots and lots of names there. But as you can see, Mason Mount to Manchester United. This isn't a conversation that's just started now. This is David Ornstein back in, when is it? Back in the 24th of April. Man United are amongst clubs with a serious interest in Mason Mount. This isn't something that's just been pulled out of thin air. Right? That's the first thing I want you to understand from this video. But now we fast forward to what's happened in these last 24 hours. And it started with Sammy Mockbell from the Daily Mail yesterday morning, saying that Manchester United are planning on launching a £55 million bid for Mason Mount. We'll scroll through this. United are launching a £55 million swoop. It's a very Daily Mail word, that swoop. For Mason Mount, he's a primary target for Erik Ten Hag. Old Trafford sources have indicated that talks over a move are set to commence. And that £55 million price tag. How much do you actually think Mason Mount is worth? No, wrong question. How much do you actually think Mason Mount would go for this summer? Because Chelsea feel that he's worth 70, 80 million. Nah, not with 1 year left on his deal. But given how many clubs are interested in him, he's been linked with Arsenal, with Liverpool, with Bayern Munich, and now in Manchester United. It's not going to be a cut price deal, that's for sure. Jacob Steinberg from The Guardian, he followed up on that, and this is what he said about Mason Mount and Manchester United. We'll scroll past all the conversation around Harry Kane, and we'll skip straight down to Mason Mount. Ten Hag is also focusing on midfield additions, and United believe they have a strong chance of signing Mount, who is increasingly likely to leave Chelsea. So that's Sammy Mockbell there, and that's now Jacob Steinberg. And here we've got David Ornstein. And David Ornstein, I suppose, is the gold standard. As far as transfers go, people wait to hear what David Ornstein's got to say. So let's read through this article here and see what David Ornstein's saying. Chelsea midfielder Mason Mount is leaning towards a move to Manchester United, and talks are expected. Other clubs interested in signing him are aware of his preference. So he's saying that Mason Mount has decided that if he leaves Chelsea this summer, which seems very likely, that Manchester United is where he wants to go. Fabrizio Romano waded in on the situation, and he's saying that Chelsea want more than 80 million for Mason Mount. Y'all are not getting that. He's got 1 year left on his deal. If Mason Mount had an extended contract, then you could probably have that conversation. But that's the power of contracts. That's why Bosmans exist. And as soon as players have 1 year left on their deal, their price goes down significantly. Now, let's run through the final piece of news on this. This is from Paul Hurst from the Times. And let's see what he is saying about Manchester United, because he's suggesting that we are going to make an early bid for Mount, which I'll believe when I see. All right. I've been a United fan for long enough to know that we don't particularly move early in the windows anymore. Hopefully that changes. It's a habit that does have to change. But I'm not too optimistic about it. But let's see what he's saying. Man United are expected to make an early bid for Mason Mount as Chelsea brace themselves for a fight to keep him. Mount is out of contract, and significant talks over an extension at Chelsea have not occurred since February. That's quite an important part there. I think Mount is on less than 100 grand a week at Chelsea. And this is just a case of that contract running down and Chelsea not being able to give him the contract that he wants, and also spending so much money that because they spent so much, they can't afford to let Mason Mount go for free. So that gives a little bit of an advantage to clubs who want to sign him at a lower price. Let's see what else is written down in this article. Liverpool, Arsenal, Bayern Munich have all long held an interest in Mount. He might not be the player that you want United to sign, but you can't just dismiss him. You can't just say, no, he'd be rubbish, he'd be an abysmal signing. Because I don't think that would be the case. Would he be an upgrade? Certainly on certain players inside our squad. Are there better players that I think we could go for? Yes. Would they be more expensive? Yes. And maybe this is all just about money. But you can see the prices down there. Chelsea wanting more than 70 mil. The cost should be closer to 47.5. That's still a lot of money. But would he be a good signing? I don't know. Miguel Delaney here this morning saying that United are confident of securing Mason Mount. So that's Sammy Motbell from the Daily Mail, Jacob Steinberg from the Guardian, David Ornstein, Fabrizio Romano, Paul Hurst, Miguel Delaney, all speaking about Mason Mount to United. There's no smoke without fire, and that's what I would call this situation. Whether you like it or not, whether you feel it's the right player or not, it looks like United are really interested in Mason Mount. Now, Ten Hag here saying, he was speaking about how bad Chelsea been in the window. What was the title of this? Man United will not make the same mistakes as Todd Bowley did. And he's saying, look, when there's no strategy, or not the right strategy, money doesn't work. And that's where we need to have a conversation around Mason Mount. Because I can understand from a strategic perspective-ish where he could fit in. Now, if you take a look at Mason Mount's numbers this year, I mean, he's been poor. You look at his heat map, he's been playing on the left-hand side, but he's hardly started. How many games he's done in the Premier League? He's started 20 games so far for Chelsea this season. He's only got 3 goals. He's not had his best campaign at all. And nobody in that Chelsea team has. You compare that to the year before, this is when he got 11 goals and 10 assists in the Premier League. And he started, 27 games? He was a very important and very influential player there. Now, this is what I want to speak about. And this deserves a video unto itself, because I think that Ten Hag might be slightly switching his system at Manchester United. I mentioned this on the live stream this morning, but look, Man United, typically, we expected to have one ball-winning player like Edson Alvarez from Ajax, one deeper line playmaker like Ryan Gravenberch from Ajax, and then one player in the number 10. I think that was, did Tadic move into the number 10? I'm not quite sure. But that's the system that we thought Ten Hag was building towards. But it feels now, seeing all the players that we're linked with, Declan Rice too, and I'll speak about him in a bit, it feels like he's moving more towards having 2 number 8s with more of a traditional number 6, and kind of switching to more of a really traditional 4-3-3 shape. And this is where Mason Mount will probably put him on the left-hand side. He's better at playing in that left half pocket of space than the right. That's where Mason Mount, I can understand the logic of the signing. His defensive work rate is up there with the best. Off the ball. The press. In terms of going forward, I don't think he excels in any area. But he also doesn't have any massive particular weaknesses. I think from a squad upgrade position, Mason Mount, I can see the logic of it. Selling Scott McTominay, getting 30 million, bringing in Mason Mount for 47 is an outlay of less than 20. Is your squad improved? Yes, your squad's improved. Does that take United's squad starting 11 from here to there? I don't think it does. I don't think it raises us enough, and more would be required. And we're hearing about Declan Rice. I don't really know how we're going to be affording Declan Rice and Mason Mount and Harry Kane and Kim. I mean, come on. Maybe I'm wrong. I did my video yesterday on the signings I think we should be making. But in terms of energy, polar opposite player to Eriksen. And we've seen that in particular away at Man City. I'm trying to think of other games it happened in. In those sorts of games, it's where the game's just a little bit too quick for Eriksen. It's where Mason Mount could come in and offer something different. As I said, it's a very different style. In this formation here, you're going to need your two centre-backs to really come further up the pitch to close that space so that you don't necessarily need that deeper line playmaker because your two centre-backs are tasked with more ball progression and Casemiro could then just be tasked with being the proper number 6. So this is why I understand Mason Mount. It's not the name that I would have on my list. I'm surprised we're having a conversation about it, but this is not the first time that Ten Hag has been linked with him. It dates back to February. And if Ten Hag wants him, then I trust Ten Hag. He's had a very good hit rate with transfers so far. He does deserve my trust. I wouldn't do blind trust on every single transfer for the sake of it. I would have questions about Mason Mount, mainly around money. 47.5 on Mason Mount. You know what I think about Caicedo. And I think Caicedo could pretty much do everything that Mason Mount could do. Certainly better from a defensive ball progression perspective. Maybe not as good towards the edge of the opposition's box. But I would prefer Caicedo. But that's the full story. As it stands on Mason Mount to Manchester United. I hope it's helped you understand everything. I hope it's showed you why there is a little bit of logic to it. It might not be the name that you want, but there is a little bit of logic to it. You can let me know what you think in the comments below, as you always do. I'm going to follow this transfer, as I do, and I'm going to follow every transfer. So make sure you subscribe to United People's TV. But hopefully, we can beat Chelsea and get Champions League football. That's not really relevant, but that's what I'm thinking about.